Have you ever prayed the same prayer so many times that you started to wonder if heaven was even listening anymore? There are mornings when the waiting feels heavier than the burden itself, when the answer you have been hoping for still has not come, and when your heart quietly asks, "Lord, how much longer?" If that is where you find yourself today, do not rush past this moment. This morning was not given to you by accident. Before the sky began to soften into color, before the birds lifted their first notes into the air, God had already set his eyes on you. He has not forgotten the prayer you whispered last night. He has not overlooked the patience you have fought so hard to hold on to. He has counted every day of your waiting, and he has never once stopped working on your behalf. There is something quietly powerful about the way a sunrise refuses to be rushed. No matter how much you long for the light to come sooner, the sun rises on its own perfect schedule, never early, never late. It simply arrives exactly when it was always going to arrive, and the whole earth rearranges itself around that faithfulness. This is what your Father's timing looks like. It is not slow because he has forgotten you. It is precise because he loves you enough to do this right. Ecclesiastes reminds us that he has made everything beautiful in its time, and Psalm 27:14 tells us plainly, "Wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord." Waiting in God's hands is never wasted. Think about Abraham. God gave him a promise while he was still strong and full of expectation, and then years passed. Not months. Years. His body grew older, his circumstances grew less likely, and still, the promise had not come to life. Yet Abraham did not receive that promise on the day he first believed it. He received it on the day God had appointed from the very beginning, and when it finally arrived, it arrived exactly right. Nothing about Abraham's story was rushed, and nothing about yours will be either. Your waiting is not evidence that God has forgotten his word. It is evidence that he is building something that will last. Maybe your waiting has worn you down. Maybe you have prayed for a breakthrough in your finances, healing for your body, restoration for your marriage, or direction for a future that feels completely unclear, and the silence has left you exhausted. Jeremiah 29:11 speaks straight into that exhaustion. "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Your Father is not withholding his plan from you. He is preparing it, and preparation always takes longer than we expect because he is not interested in giving you something quick. He is interested in giving you something whole today. Place your waiting into his hands. Let every anxious question about timing bow before the character of the one who has never once been late. Let every fear that says your best days are behind you fall silent before a God whose mercies are new every morning, as Lamentations 3:20-23 declares. Just as the darkness cannot hold back the dawn no matter how long the night feels, your circumstances cannot hold back what God has already decided to do in your life. The sun is still going to rise. The promise is still going to come. And when it does, you will look back and understand that every single day of waiting had a purpose you could not yet see. So lift your eyes this morning. This is not the end of your story. This is the quiet middle chapter where faith is being formed, where trust is being deepened, and where God is doing far more behind the scenes than your eyes have been allowed to witness. Let his peace settle over your waiting. Let his patience become your patience. Let his unshakable timing become the ground beneath your feet. His provision is healing, his direction, his unfailing presence, and his promise that is coming right on schedule, exactly when it should. There is a particular kind of ache that comes from praying for something and watching the calendar move forward without an answer. Perhaps you have asked God for a financial breakthrough, and the bills still arrive every month like clockwork while the provision you are hoping for has yet to show up. Perhaps You have asked for healing and the pain has not lifted. Perhaps you are simply tired, the kind of tired that sleep does not fix because your soul has been carrying a question mark for longer than you expected to carry it. If this describes your morning, know that you are not alone in this feeling, and you are certainly not forgotten. Think about Joseph. He was given a dream from God when he was just a young man, full of hope for what his life would become. But between that dream and its fulfillment stood betrayal by his own brothers, years of slavery in a foreign land, a false accusation, and a prison cell that held him far longer than seemed fair. If you had asked Joseph in the middle of that prison whether God's timing made sense, he may not have had an answer. But God was not absent during those years. He was quietly training Joseph's character, positioning him for influence, and preparing an entire nation to be saved through a plan that could only be revealed at the appointed time. What looked like delay was actually preparation. What looked like the end of the story was actually the road to the palace. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall you not know it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." This is a promise for the dry seasons, the ones where nothing seems to be growing and no evidence of progress can be seen. But underneath the dry ground, God is already at work. A river does not appear instantly in a desert. It carves its path slowly, patiently, until suddenly the landscape has changed completely. Your breakthrough may be forming exactly like that river, quietly beneath the surface, in a place your eyes cannot yet reach. As the morning light climbs slowly over the horizon rather than flooding the sky all at once, let it remind you that God's work in your life often unfolds gradually rather than all at once. He is not withholding His goodness from you. He is releasing it in a sequence that only He can see the full shape of. Romans 8:28 reminds us that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Not some things, not the easy things. All things, including the waiting, including the delay, including the parts of this season that feel unfair or unclear. Today, resist the temptation to measure God's faithfulness by how quickly your prayers are answered. His faithfulness was never up for debate, only your patience is being shaped. Speak this over your life today, over your family, over your finances, over every unanswered prayer still sitting quietly on heaven's altar. Declare that your waiting has purpose, that your prayers have been heard, and that the same God who walked Joseph from the prison to the palace is walking you toward a breakthrough prepared specifically for you. His provision, His perfect timing, His unshakable faithfulness, and the fullness of everything He has promised. There are mornings when fear moves faster than faith, when you wake up already replaying every worst-case scenario before your feet have even touched the floor. Financial pressure that refuses to ease. A diagnosis still waiting to be explained. A relationship that feels like it is standing on uncertain ground. In moments like these, waiting on God does not feel peaceful. It feels like standing at the edge of something you cannot control, wondering if the ground beneath you will hold. Remember the Israelites standing at the edge of the Red Sea. Pharaoh's army was closing in behind them, and ahead of them stood only water, deep and impossible to cross. By every human measurement, they were trapped. There was no visible way forward and no way to go back. Yet in that very moment of apparent impossibility, God did not ask them to solve the problem. He simply asked them to stand still and watch Him work. And when the moment was right, not a second before, the sea parted, and the people walked through on dry ground. God did not part the sea while Pharaoh's army was still miles away and the danger felt distant. He waited until the need was undeniable, until every human solution had run out, so that when the miracle came, there would be no question about who had done it. Psalm 46:1 declares, God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Notice that it does not say God is a distant help, arriving only when it is convenient. He's an ever-present help, meaning he is already standing at the edge of your Red Sea with you, even in the moments when the water looks the deepest and the enemy behind you looks the loudest. His timing is not slower than your crisis. His timing is perfectly matched to it, because he alone knows the exact moment when the parting of the waters will bring him the most glory and you the most freedom. As the sun rises fully now, spreading gold across the water and the land alike, let it remind you that light always reaches even the deepest and most uncertain places. No valley is too low for his presence to reach, and no fear is too large for his power to calm. Isaiah 41:10 speaks directly into this moment. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Yes, I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. That promise was not written for people who already had it figured out. It was written for people standing at the edge of the water, unsure of what would happen next. Today, refuse to let fear write the ending to a story that God has not finished telling. Refuse to let uncertainty convince you that the water in front of you is the final word. Speak over your family, your health, your work, and every closed door still standing before you that the same God who parted the Red Sea is still making paths through impossible places today. Let his peace guard your heart, his strength carry your steps, his provision meet you exactly where you are standing, his protection surround everyone you love, and his perfect timing carry you safely through every uncertain water you are facing. This very morning, there is a particular kind of tiredness that comes not from what you are doing but from what you are still hoping for. It is the exhaustion of a heart that has been faithful for a long time without yet seeing the reward of that faithfulness. Sleep does not always fix this kind of weariness, because it is not really the body that is tired. It is the spirit worn thin from carrying hope for longer than it expected to. Elijah understood this kind of exhaustion. During a season of famine, God led him to a small brook, and there, in a place that looked like nowhere in particular, God sent ravens to feed him morning and evening, day after day. Elijah did not know how long the famine would last. He did not know when the brook might dry up, and eventually it did. But even then, God had already prepared the next provision before Elijah ever needed it. The point of that season was never for Elijah to understand every detail in advance. The point was for him to trust that provision would come exactly when it was needed, not a moment before and not a moment too late. Philippians 4:19 promises, "My God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus." Notice that this promise is not tied to your timeline. It is tied to his riches, which never run dry, and his glory, which is never in a hurry. If you are tired today, tired of waiting for provision, tired of waiting for rest, tired of hoping for something that has not yet arrived, know that the God who sent ravens to a brook in the wilderness has not forgotten how to provide for you either. As the morning sun climbs higher, warming the earth after the coolness of night, let it remind you that even the parts of your life that feel dormant are being prepared for growth. Nothing about this waiting season is wasted. Isaiah 42:31 gives strength to exactly this kind of tiredness. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. This is not a promise for people who have stopped waiting. It is a promise for people who are still in the middle of it, still trusting, still showing up even when their strength feels low today. Let every tired place in your heart be met by the strength that only comes from waiting on the Lord. Let every worn-out hope be renewed by his faithfulness. Speak over your weariness today and declare that rest is coming, provision is coming, strength is being renewed even now, his peace, his provision, his perfect timing, and His unfailing presence carrying you through every tired morning until the moment your strength is fully restored. Fear for the people we love has a way of settling deep into the chest and refusing to leave. A child who has wandered, a spouse carrying a burden they will not talk about, a parent whose health is beginning to change. These fears do not knock politely. They arrive uninvited, often in the quiet hours before sunrise, when the world is still and there is nothing to distract you from the worry. Think about David standing before Goliath. Everyone else on that battlefield saw a giant too large to defeat, and they measured the size of the threat against the size of their own strength and found themselves lacking. But David measured the size of the giant against the size of his God, and there was no comparison at all. David did not wait for the giant to look smaller before he moved forward in faith. He moved forward in faith while the giant was still standing at full height because his confidence had never come from the size of the problem. It came from the size of the one he trusted. Whatever giant is standing in front of your family today, whether it is fear for their safety, their health, their faith, or their future, Romans 8:31 reminds you, if God is for us, who can be against us? This is not a promise that the giant will disappear before you have to face it. It is a promise that you are never facing it alone, and that the outcome does not depend on your own strength. It depends on His. As the sunlight breaks fully over the horizon now, casting long shadows that slowly shrink as the sun climbs higher, let it remind you that fear too shrinks in the presence of a rising light. The giants that look enormous in the shadowed hours of early morning often look smaller once the full light of day has come. Deuteronomy 31:8 promises, "The Lord Himself goes before you and will be with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you." He is already standing on the road ahead of the people you love, preparing the path before they ever walk it. Today, speak this over every person you carry in your heart. Speak protection over your children. Speak wisdom over your spouse. Speak healing over your parents. Speak peace over every fear that has tried to convince you that love means constant worry. Trust that the same God who gave David the courage to face Goliath is giving your family exactly what they need right on time: His protection, His wisdom, His healing, His peace, and His unfailing presence surrounding everyone you love. This very day, there is a particular loneliness that comes with grief that lingers longer than others expect it to. People move on with their lives while you are still carrying the weight of a loss, a diagnosis, or a sorrow that refuses to lift on anyone else's schedule. You may feel as though you should be further along by now, healed by now, over it by now. But healing was never meant to follow someone else's timeline. It follows yours, and more importantly, it follows God's. Remember the woman who had suffered for 12 long years with a condition no doctor could fix. 12 years is not a short season. It is over a decade of hoping, spending, and being disappointed again and again. Yet she did not give up believing that healing was still possible. And when she finally reached out and touched the hem of Jesus' garment, healing came in a single moment. After 12 years of waiting, her healing was not delayed because God did not care. It arrived at the exact moment she was able to reach for it in faith, and that moment was worth the wait. Psalm 34:18 declares, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit." He has never been distant from your grief, even when it has lasted far longer than you expected. He has counted every tear, and He has not grown impatient with your healing process, even if you have grown impatient with yourself. As the morning light warms the dew still clinging to the grass, slowly lifting it into the air, let it remind you that healing often happens gradually, invisibly, before it becomes something you can see or touch. Jeremiah 30:17 promises, "For I will restore health to you and heal you of your wounds," says the Lord. That promise still stands, whether your healing came yesterday, is coming today, or is still quietly forming somewhere ahead of you. Nothing about your grief has gone unnoticed by heaven. Today, place your grief into the hands of the one who never rushes the process of healing a wounded heart. Let his patience become your patience with yourself. Let his nearness become your comfort. In the waiting, speak healing over every place still tender, every wound still open, every sorrow that has lingered longer than you expected. His healing, his comfort, his nearness, his perfect timing, and his unfailing compassion meeting you exactly where you are this morning. There is a specific kind of pain that comes from praying for something for so long that you begin to wonder whether God has stopped listening altogether. It is not the pain of a new request. It is the pain of an old one that has been prayed so many times it almost feels worn out, one that you have nearly stopped saying out loud because saying it again feels like reopening a wound. Hannah understood this pain intimately. Year after year she came before the Lord with the same request, carrying a sorrow so deep that when she finally poured it out, the priest watching her assumed she was drunk from the intensity of her silent weeping. She did not receive an immediate answer. She received years of waiting, years of watching others receive what she longed for, years of carrying an ache that never seemed to end. But in God's appointed time, not a moment before, her prayer was answered in a way that became part of the story of an entire nation. 1 Peter 5-7 invites you into exactly this kind of honesty. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Notice that it does not say cast your anxiety on him once and be done with it. It invites ongoing honesty, the kind that keeps bringing the same request back to God even when the answer has not yet come, because he has never grown tired of hearing your voice. As the light of morning continues to rise steadily, never skipping a single day no matter how long the night before it felt, let it remind you that consistency is one of God's greatest gifts to you. He shows up every single morning, whether or not your prayer has been answered yet, because his faithfulness was never contingent on your timeline. James 1-5 reminds us, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all liberally and without reproach, and it will be given to him. Even in the waiting, wisdom is available to you, wisdom for how to keep hoping, how to keep trusting, and how to keep bringing your same old prayer back to the same faithful God. Today, do not be ashamed of the prayer you have prayed 100 times before. Bring it again. Speak it again. Let your voice join Hannah's across the centuries, believing that the God who remembered her in his perfect timing has not forgotten you either. His faithfulness, his wisdom, his nearness in the waiting, his perfect timing, and his promise that no prayer prayed in faith is ever wasted. There is a discouragement that settles in after you have worked hard for something and come up empty-handed. It is different from grief and different from fear. It is the quiet defeat of effort that did not seem to produce anything, the sense that maybe you missed your chance, or maybe the opportunity was never really there to begin with. Think about Peter after a long night of fishing that produced absolutely nothing. He was an experienced fisherman, and he had done everything right by every measure he knew, yet his nets remained empty through the entire night. By morning, exhaustion, disappointment had settled deep into his shoulders. But then Jesus stepped into the situation and gave a simple instruction: launch out into the deep. Peter's obedience in that moment, even after a night of failure, led to a catch so large the nets began to break. The miracle did not come during the hours of effort. It came after the effort had ended, at the exact moment Jesus chose to step in. Matthew 6:33-34 reminds us, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Take therefore no thought for the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Your job was never to force the breakthrough on your own timeline. Your job is to keep showing up in obedience, even after a night that produced nothing, and to trust that God's timing for the miracle is not the same as your timing for the effort. As the sun rises fully now, illuminating the water in ways the darkness never could, let it remind you that some things simply cannot be seen until the light arrives, no matter how hard you search for them in the dark. Philippians 4:13 declares, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me," not because your own strength was ever going to be enough, but because His strength has never once failed to show up exactly when it was needed. Today, do not measure your worth or your future by the empty nets of yesterday. Launch out again one more time in obedience, trusting that God's breakthrough is not measured by your effort but by His timing. Speak over every disappointment, every empty-handed night, every moment that felt like wasted work, His provision, His perfect timing, His abundant blessing, and His promise that obedience is never wasted, even when the results are delayed. There are seasons that feel like a prison, not because of anything you have done wrong, but simply because of circumstances that have closed in around you and left you feeling trapped. Financial strain that will not loosen its grip. A situation at work or at home that feels impossible to escape. A season of life that has gone on far longer than you expected, leaving you chained to a set of circumstances you never chose. Paul and Silas were literally imprisoned, their backs beaten, and their feet bound in stocks, in circumstances that offered no natural reason for hope. Yet in the middle of the night, instead of complaining about their situation, they began to pray and sing hymns to God. They did not wait for their circumstances to change before they chose worship. They chose worship first, and it was in the middle of that worship, at midnight, that the earth shook, the chains broke, and the prison doors flew open. Their freedom did not come at the moment they expected it. It came at the moment God had appointed, in the middle of their praise. Philippians 4:2-6-7 gives us this same invitation. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God which surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Notice, that peace is promised even before the prison doors open, even before the circumstances change. It is a peace that exists inside the waiting, not just after it. As the morning light stretches across the sky, breaking the darkness that has held on through the night, let it remind you that no chain, no closed door, and no impossible circumstance is stronger than the God who is holding your life. Hebrews 13:5 promises, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." He is present in the prison just as fully as He is present in the freedom that follows. Today, whatever feels like a chain around your circumstances, whatever door feels permanently shut, choose worship before the breakthrough rather than waiting for the breakthrough to choose worship. Speak freedom over every trapped place in your life. Declare that midnight worship still moves the hand of God today, His freedom, His peace, His perfect timing, and His unshakable presence in the middle of every closed door you are facing. There is a particular kind of pressure that comes from being asked to hold your convictions in a season when compromise would be so much easier. Financial pressure that tempts you to cut corners you know you shouldn't cut. Relational pressure that tempts you to say yes to something your spirit knows is wrong. In these moments, waiting on God's timing does not just mean waiting patiently. It means standing firm while the pressure builds around you. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego faced exactly this kind of pressure. They were told to compromise their convictions or be thrown into a furnace so hot it would kill the men who merely stood near it to throw them in. They chose to stand firm, telling the king plainly that even if God did not rescue them, they would not bow. And in that furnace, in the middle of the fire, they were not alone. A fourth figure walked with them, and when they emerged, not even the smell of smoke clung to their clothes. God did not keep them out of the fire. He met them inside of it, and He brought them through it at exactly the right time. 2 Corinthians 12:9 gives us this promise. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Sometimes God's timing is not about removing you from the fire before it starts. It is about walking with you through the fire until the moment it is time to walk out. As the morning sun burns off the last of the mist hovering over the fields, let it remind you that fire in God's hands does not always destroy. Sometimes it refines. Sometimes it reveals exactly who is standing beside you in the hardest moments. Hebrews 13:8 declares, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same presence that walked through the furnace with 3 faithful men is walking through your fire with you today. Today, do not compromise your convictions just because the pressure feels unbearable. Stand firm, trusting that God's timing for your deliverance has not failed, even if it has not yet arrived. Speak over every furnace you are facing His presence, His protection, His perfect timing, and His promise that you will walk out of this fire without even the smell of smoke on your clothes. There are walls in life that look permanent, obstacles so large and so old that you have simply come to accept them as unmovable. A relationship that has never healed. A financial situation that seems built into the structure of your life. A dream that has stood closed for so long you have stopped praying about it out loud. These walls can feel like Jericho, ancient, immovable, standing in the way of everything God has promised. Joshua was given instructions that made no logical sense. March around the wall. Do it again. Do it 7 times on the 7th day. Blow the trumpets. There was no battle plan here that any military strategist would have designed, and yet Joshua obeyed exactly as instructed, 1 lap at a time, trusting that the walls would fall not because of strength but because of obedience timed to God's exact instruction. And on the day appointed, not a day before, the walls came down. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He shall direct your paths. Sometimes, God's path toward your breakthrough will not make sense to you. It may look like walking in circles around the same problem again and again. But obedience is never wasted, even when it feels repetitive, even when the wall has not fallen yet. As the sun climbs higher still, casting its light across the land, in a way that reveals every hidden feature of the landscape, let it remind you that what looks unmovable in the dim light of early morning often looks entirely different once the full light of day has arrived. Isaiah 26:3 promises, you will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. Peace is available to you even while you are still walking your laps around the wall, even before it has fallen. Storms have a way of arriving without warning, turning a calm morning into chaos in a matter of moments. Financial storms, health storms, relational storms, the kind that leave you gripping the sides of the boat, wondering if you are going to make it through. In these moments, it can feel as though God is asleep, unaware of how desperate the situation has become. The disciples felt exactly this way when a violent storm arose while they were crossing the sea, and Jesus, exhausted, was sleeping in the back of the boat. They woke him in a panic, certain they were about to perish, and he stood, spoke 3 words to the wind and the waves, peace, be still, and immediately the storm obeyed. He was never unaware of the storm. He was simply waiting for the right moment to demonstrate that his authority extended over every wave threatening to overtake them. Isaiah 26:3, spoken again over a different kind of storm, and Psalm 91 both remind us that whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. That rest does not depend on the absence of storms. It depends on the presence of the one who commands them. Even a sleeping Christ in the boat is still sovereign over the waves. As the sunrise scatters light across water that only hours before was churning with storm and darkness, let it remind you that calm always follows the voice of the one who speaks it. No storm you are facing today, whether visible to others or hidden deep within your own heart, is beyond the reach of his authority. Romans 8:28 reminds us again that all things, even the terrifying ones, work together for good for those who love him. Today, wake the faith inside you that may have fallen asleep during the storm. Speak peace over every wave threatening to overtake your family, your finances, your health, and your future. Declare that the same voice that calmed the sea 2,000 years ago is speaking peace over your storm this very morning. His authority, his peace, his perfect timing, and his unshakable presence in the middle of every wave. As this morning draws toward its fullness and the sun now sits high and unhidden in the sky, let one final truth settle deeply into your heart. Daniel was placed into a den of lions for the crime of praying faithfully, and he spent the entire night there, surrounded by danger that should have ended his life before morning came. But God shut the mouths of the lions, and when the king came at first light, terrified of what he might find, Daniel was alive, untouched, and at peace. His deliverance did not come the moment he entered the den. It came at the appointed hour, after a night that surely felt endless, and it arrived exactly on time. However long your own night has felt, however long you have been waiting for God to shut the mouths of whatever lions surround your circumstances, know this: morning always comes. It came for Daniel, and it will come for you. Your waiting has not been wasted. Your patience has not gone unnoticed. Every prayer you have prayed, every tear you have cried in the quiet hours before dawn, every moment you chose to trust instead of giving up, has been seen and treasured by a God who has never once been late to anything he promised. So today, let this be your declaration. I will trust his timing over my timeline. I will trust his wisdom over my understanding. I will believe that what looks delayed is being divinely prepared, that what looks impossible is already being worked out behind the scenes, and that every unanswered prayer is closer to its answer than it has ever been before. Let every fear bow to his faithfulness. Let every doubt bow to his unfailing word. Let this new day carry you forward with confidence, not because you can see the whole plan, but because you know the one who holds it. Walk into today believing that God's timing is not against you but for you, that his patience with your process is matched only by his commitment to your future, and that the very same sunrise that broke through the darkness this morning is proof that light always comes, that mercy is always new, and that his promises are always kept. His peace, his provision, his healing, his protection, his wisdom, his unshakable faithfulness, and his perfect, unhurried, unfailing timing are with you now and will carry you through every moment of this day and every day still to come.